how do you actually do that? How do you put that into practice? Because, I mean, I think, like, we could say these things,
Hmm.
like, the behaviors could say it, like, "I'm going out, I'm gonna hook up with someone else, I'm doing whatever it is," but how do we get to the point of actually getting there?
It's behavior, bitches.
Hey guys, it's Liat. Welcome to today's episode of Behavior Bitches Podcast. Today is going to get interesting because the guest we have on is someone that I actually happened to be scrolling my Instagram or TikTok. I don't remember which one, but then I remember taking a screenshot of it and sending it to Martha and being like, we need to get this guy on. So this guy is here. This is, by the way, all you have to do is ask in life. You never know. Maybe they'll say yes. And he's sitting here and he's also been really patient because by the time we get the podcast started each time, you would think we've never done the podcast before. But like there's so much tech stuff that goes into it and like one audio doesn't work than the other. So thank you for being so patient to start off.
Absolutely.
You're a real gentleman. So, who is our guest today? Our guest is Keith Crossley. He's an author, speaker, and transformation coach. He helps people break through their pain, patterns, and past quickly. His popular book, State Within Light, outlines a clear path to enlightenment that anyone can follow. He's also the creator of the Affair Recovery Program. That's interesting, right? And Anxiety Detox Program, helping people recover after betrayal and overcome anxiety for good. Keith has coached clients from all over the world, and his videos on healing, relationships, and enlightenment have been viewed more than 75 million times. That's very impressive. Across all social media. His work has been featured in major publications across MSN, NASDAQ, Entrepreneur Magazine, and Barnhart. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be with you.
I'm so excited to have you on. And just to get to know you a little bit in the beginning here, I want to ask you, what is the pettiest breakup move you've ever seen?
Pettiest breakup move? I have heard of people who have their friend tell their partner, which seems like even worse than a text message to me. Like you don't even have the guts to do it directly, even over text. So they'll, tell like a friend to go break the bad news to somebody.
Like that,
Seems pretty lame.
like that you don't want to date anymore, like a divorce, or
Yeah, almost like a high school kid, who is afraid to go break up with his girlfriend, so he sends his buddy. I've seen adults do that.
wow, I didn't know for breaking up because I've definitely heard it. Like, I mean, like I remember being in middle school and it being like, "Hey, Evan Burns likes you," Evan Burns wants you to be
Yeah,
his
some
girlfriend or
people
something
don't
like that.
actually mature beyond middle school, so you have to keep that in mind.
And then you know the song "High School Never Ends." Alan, cue that in there.
High school never ends.
It's a good one, and it's true and sad. All right, my next question is, what is the most common toxic dynamic that we see in relationships?
I think in a lot of cases, people are unaware that their root issues are rejection and abandonment, and so they self-sabotage their relationship in order to protect against that fear. So, one of the most common dynamics I see is the victim rescuer dynamic. So, one person plays the victim all the time. You never take care of me. You don't love me the way that I want to be loved. And what they're doing is they create chaos in order to force someone to rescue them, which is the only way that they know how to feel loved. And so, in that dynamic, both people's needs are actually getting met. The victim feels loved when they're rescued, and the person who rescues feels valued when they have an opportunity to save somebody. So they end up in this toxic loop of victim rescue over and over again, never getting to a healthy form of love.
Right, and do you think a lot of this stems from past relationship patterns that people have seen or been conditioned to over time?
That, but it's deeper than that. It starts in childhood because we all share the same universal human fear. And when you strip it all down, we are all afraid of not being enough. And if we are not enough, then we are not worthy of love. And that's why relationships are one of the most difficult things for people to get right, is because they're unconsciously always guarding against that fear of not being enough. So we have all these ways that we push our partner away, or we create distance in the relationship, or we create a problem that we think is real, but really it's just a way to push them away. And it's all to protect that very core fear of not being enough. And then on the flip side, if you think about why are breakups so painful? one of the primary reasons, especially if we were the one that was rejected, is it's tugging at the heartstrings of that core fear that we have. Oh my gosh, I wasn't enough for this person. That confirms my greatest fear. I'm not lovable because I'm not enough.
Breakups are the worst thing ever. Do you know,
They
like,
are.
I always say if I was not doing what I'm doing for my work, and I still feel like one day I will work on the projects I've wanted to work on, but, like, the breakup space, like, just in general, like, no matter how many people are singing about it, everyone's talking about it, like, it's like people, like, do crazy things after a breakup, but, like,
Mhm.
yours always seems the worst. Like,
Yeah.
it's just the most isolating, just in so many areas.
It's
Whenever
like
I
your
hear someone go
entire
through
reality just gets shattered.
everything,
Yeah.
your behavioral patterns of who are you texting? What are you doing? Like, is this person still my friend or is that a friend of my partner? Um, like I have to refine my interests or just, I mean, and like all the self-talk, like, we talk about that like private verbal behavior in the behavior space of
Mhm.
like, am I ever gonna find someone? I'm gonna be alone forever, and just all these different things. And it's really difficult.
Well, there's not an aspect of your life that it doesn't affect because even if you're leaving a relationship that you logically know is not good for you still are leaving behind friendship, companionship, even an addiction to the toxic parts of the relationship. So a breakup always means moving totally into the unknown. And if there is one thing that our ego hates almost more than anything else, it's stepping into uncertainty and not knowing what the future holds. At least the past was predictable, something I could count on, even if it was miserable. But that familiar hell is better than this unknown potential heaven that I may or may not get to.
Absolutely. I mean, that is spot on.
It's behavior, bitches.
Hey, it's Liat. Want $100 off the Live Collective? Well, right now you can get that using coupon code EARLYAF. You'll get 12 weeks, which is filled with 24 classes of every single thing you need to know for the BCBA or BCABA exam. We will be your study trainers with everything you should be doing at exactly what time. If you're stressed about looking at the Cooper book, fear no more, we're here. Head on over to studynotesaba.com/collectives and grab your seat. Okay, so I want to know, how did you get into this? Did you go through a bad breakup? Were you
Yeah, I've been through probably three major breakups in my life, earlier in my life. One was a girl I dated in high school. We dated for 2 years and ended up going to college together. And in one of my classes, we were sitting next to each other, and she said, I've actually found another guy that I'm interested in, and I don't want to date anymore. And I remember walking out of that class and I went straight to my college dorm room. And I remember sitting against the cinder block wall and just sobbing uncontrollably. And I remember being on the phone to my mom. I was 18 years old and just, I couldn't even breathe. I didn't even know that level of emotional pain was possible.
I literally
And
feel this as
yeah,
you talk about it. I feel it. Like I went home
yeah,
from college for a semester after a breakup.
yeah.
Like and had to go
Brutal.
back and was in like CBT, outpatient, inpatient.
Yeah.
I was so depressed. I like feel it when you talk about this.
Oh
Ugh.
yeah, it's brutal. But what there might be an interesting thing that I've only learned later on in life is what would happen after I would go through breakups is I would be so devastated that I would then hold on to this hope that maybe it's not right now, but maybe it's going to be right later. And what I soon discovered is that that's the ego's way of trying to soften the blow and minimize the pain. It's basically saying, this hurts so freaking bad that I'm going to create kind of an escape hatch that I can hold on to in hopes that this relationship will come back as a diversion from the amount of pain someone is in. So, as backwards of advice as this might sound, when people are going through breakups, I always tell them resist the urge to try to tell yourself that this is going to come back at a future point because that actually stunts your healing.
Okay, but that sounds, like how do you actually do that? How do you put that into practice? Because I mean, I think like we could say these things,
Hmm.
Like the behaviors could say it, like I'm going out, I'm going to hook up with someone else, I'm doing whatever it is. But how do we get to the point of actually getting there? As it
There's a great quote. It's actually a quote by Jesus, and he says, "Know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And a lot of people think that truth means it's about some religious doctrine. That has nothing to do with what it means. What it really means is that if you are the type of person who can stare truth right in the face, as painful as it is, after you face that truth and feel your way through it, you will find freedom on the other side. But if you try to throttle that pain, if you try to push that pain down, if you try to deny it, and you're in denial about reality, you will prolong and even exacerbate the pain far into the future. So that it's a conscious willingness to dive headfirst into pain, knowing that if you go through that process willingly, it won't leave a lingering residue.
What are your thoughts on the idea of whether you need someone else to move on? People are like, "No, you need to do it on your own, blah blah blah."
My
But
personal opinion is that most of us intuitively know that we're really not ready to form any kind of a new relationship or even just go to sleep with somebody to get over it. Deep down, I think most of us intuitively know that strategy doesn't really work, but we're so desperate to feel a different way that we go solve it in a way that doesn't actually solve it. I mean, how many people do you know who have successfully gone that route and like, oh yeah, I'm totally fine, totally over my ex now? No, the pain's still there. You're just trying to mask it a little bit. What's your opinion?
my opinion, I'll tell you what's interesting. I mean, I am also not the type of person that can be like, whatever. Like, I have to feel connected to someone to be able to like move on. And um, I've been in relationships that, you know, weren't necessarily the relationships that okay, I've definitely been in toxic relationships before. I've been in a toxic relationship and I like in college. And I remember being like, this is also the boyfriend that I went home for a semester. Like, we would fight about everything. I don't even know what there was to fight about. Like, in hindsight, I'm like, what were we even fighting about? Like, I have zero interest in fighting. I don't even know what it possibly could have been about. But, when I look at it in hindsight, I'm like, it was that variable ratio schedule of like getting that high when things were good. And then when they
Hmm.
were bad, right? It's another like reason to get that high again. So
Hmm.
like I understand why we were doing it, but I do think there is something to be said that like, yes, you do need to work on yourself. This is an opportunity to become the best version of you, like get in shape, do these different things. But I do think that like when you are in a better place, like you really can truly move on once you meet someone else. Like,
Absolutely. But don't you need to be kind of ready for that?
yes, 1,000%. You do have to be ready
Yeah.
for it. But, like, I think we might, like, stay in lingering relationships as I've done or, like, potentially situationships, whatever it is, because you don't have a replacement. Like, I know in behavior, we talk a lot
Hmm.
about, like, replacement behaviors, it's like
Hmm.
until something that is going to compete for your attention, which we call matching law, like, where your behavior
Hmm.
goes or reinforcement flows, you're gonna stay in the same situation often.
Yeah. What I struggle with a little bit in principle is the idea of using other people to regulate our own emotions.
Oh, that for sure.
So, what I mean by that is, of course, if you're in a friendship, if you're in a relationship, it's normal and natural to lean on another person for support. But what I'm not a fan of is that when we are not personally in an emotionally stable place, and then we are dependent on someone or something else outside of us in order to regulate our emotions. And that's often how we compound our pain or divert ourselves away from our pain. So, the way I think about any kind of a significant emotional event in our lives, whether it's betrayal, whether it's a breakup, whether it's trauma, they all can teach us really valuable lessons that are way bigger than what's actually going on. So, if you think about like a human being, we all have a spectrum of emotions that we can feel. And on the upper end, you've got joy and bliss and ecstasy and peace and all these amazing emotions. And the other end of the spectrum, you've got grief and loss and abandonment and all of the rejection, all the things that we don't want to feel. So what ends up happening over time is we go, I don't like how these negative ones feel, so I'm going to start to temper this. I'm going to throttle it. I'm going to kind of suppress the negative emotions because they're too painful. But what we don't realize is that unconsciously we can't selectively just numb the negative.
Uh-huh.
So now we start to numb the positive side of the equation as well. Where now I'm too afraid to let my guard down because I could get hurt. I'm too afraid to allow myself to be happy because it may not last. So we've now limited the range of human emotion, and then we wonder why we don't feel very alive. And it's because fundamentally we are afraid to feel. So the healing process is simply a willingness to dive headfirst into the pain, trusting that if we do it willingly, it will process its way through us. But the real magic, if you're wise, is that you will discover something way more important. And it's that you don't need to live in fear of your feelings anymore. Because heartbreak or trauma or abandonment are not the actual problems. The problem is that we're afraid of how they're going to make us feel. So, but a healthy,
That's
integrated person who has a willingness to feel negative emotions, knowing that they will process through them, can live a much freer life because they're not living a life in fear of pain.
so really the only way out is through.
You said it.
And I mean, it's actually interesting when you look at these different things, you know, in life in general. It could be obviously like a betrayal, it could be a paper cut, it could be or anything that's going on around you, or like someone said something. Like I remember, I don't know where I read this, but essentially, and this is going to sound like from a behavioral angle, just we have a lot of behavior analysts
Of
listening,
course.
right? Like this, it's a neutral stimulus in your environment, whatever it is, right? But it's a lot about what we have conditioned with it or how we're responding to it, and just allowing those. Are we going to tie something positive to it, or are we going to tie something negative? Which, like, obviously, a lot of things are very hard to tie something positive if you've been betrayed, or, but it's a it's a lot of work with like feeling anything. And I know like our field right now is very into ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. The idea of not understanding that these feelings are going to pass and not giving them so much power. But it's
Correct.
hard.
It is hard, and it's a training process and a retraining process of how we have learned. We've all learned that we need to walk around with all kinds of protections. Well, the whole purpose of protection is to protect us from pain. But it stands to reason that if we really cared about being free and living the best version of our lives, we wouldn't spend our lives living in fear. So, what does that tell you? It means you have to learn how to make peace with the fact that you are going to feel a wide range of human emotions. And it only takes a handful of times of leaning into an emotion without resistance, feeling the pain, letting it surge through you, the sadness, the grief, the whatever it is. And then something very magical happens. On the other side of processing pain, we all go, and there's this exhale, just like a baby does. That is how our brain and our body process their way through pain. And the bigger the pain is, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to process. But if we're willingly feeling it all along the way, it dissipates over time. So you learn to trust the process of healing and feeling your way through pain.
It's behavior, bitches.
Are you a BCBA now and you are sad because you hate your job? Are you thinking, I worked so effing hard and here I am, dreading Monday? Well, you're not the only one. We get that message all the time, and we decided to do something about it. Welcome our newest baby, Pair ABA by Study Notes ABA. What is this? Well, we pair you with jobs that you actually don't hate. Imagine that. Imagine going to work on Monday and being excited about it. Imagine working somewhere where you're appreciated, you're paid well, they're doing ethical practice, and you love what you do. Well, that's not impossible because we have formed Pair ABA, where we talk to clinics that we would actually want to work at. We're not going to send you anywhere. We are assessing these clinics to see, are they doing the good work? Are they not telling you one thing and then having you do another thing once you sign on? If you're concerned that you're not happy or you're feeling unsettled where you are, don't settle. Don't settle in relationships. Don't settle in work. Realize your value. Let us help you find a job where you are happy. All you need to do is head on over to pairaba.com. The response effort is low. Fill out the form so we can help you find job options near you. If you're a clinic and you think you're good enough for us to place at, also head over to pairaba.com. And we will see, are you good enough for our badass BCBAs who we protect? Go check it out, pairaba.com. Love you, mean it. So what are some behavioral steps, like actual action someone could take if they are actively going through pain? Like, I'm just thinking of someone who's, unable to get their day started. Like, just
hmm
what would you tell this person? Whether they
So
had a breakup or divorce, whatever it is.
let me answer that with a story that will illustrate what I personally do. I call this principle making peace with the extremes. So I imagine the worst case scenario, and I will go straight to that and process it as if it's already happened, or if something actually does happen, I go straight into it. So to give you an analogy, during COVID, my dad got sick. He's an ER doctor. He's been healthy his whole life, marathon runner, bulletproof.
I love
But
ER doctors. I have lupus. I spend a lot of time with them.
yeah, he's a very good man. But he got sick with COVID because he didn't take the shot, and he lost 25 pounds in 13 days. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep,
Wow.
he couldn't drink, had to go to the ER multiple times for IVs. And so I'm on a text message thread with all of my family, my siblings, and mom. And the longer this goes on, it became clear that my dad might actually die. And on top of it, he got pneumonia on day 13. So the anxiety on the family text message thread starting to ramp up. And I can feel myself starting to get a little bit anxious that what if my dad dies? Like, I'm not ready for that. I don't want that. So rather than sit in that anxiety and the uncertainty, I went on my front porch and I sat there and I closed my eyes and I imagined what it would be like if my dad died. I pictured holding his hand at the hospital as he took his last breath. I pictured what would I say at his funeral. I thought about all the memories of the times he showed up for me and how great of a dad he's been. Well, you can imagine that recalling all of this and imagining it was incredibly emotional. I'm sitting there sobbing like a baby on my front porch. But because I know how emotions work, I know that if I'm willing to fully feel that, it's allowing my brain and my body to process through the emotion. And most emotions, when you don't hold them back, take about 90 seconds to chemically process through the body. And then at the very end of that 90 seconds, the body goes,
We
and
call
it
that
does
negative
the exhale.
reinforcement for anyone listening. Sorry, that is what
Yeah,
we call negative reinforcement when you could finally, like, you have this aversive feeling and you have that relief.
correct. So, in principle, what I'm trying to share with you and your audience is that whatever it is that you are most afraid to feel and you are most afraid to look at is the very thing you must look at and feel in order to reach liberation, in order to be free from the pain. That's not a one-time thing when it comes to a breakup. So if we were to map out like breakup recovery on a like a line graph, that line would have major ups and downs, moments where you think you're never ever going to be the same. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, maybe I'm getting over this, and you're feeling pretty good. Oh no, there's a trigger, we're right back to the bottom. So that line graph is bouncing way up and down all the time, especially very early on. But if we were to map out the healing process over, say, 6 months or 12 months, that line graph would be trending upward. It's still got the ups and downs, but the ups and downs are getting less and less over time, and we're trending upwards towards healing and being able to move on. So, part of this is you have to recalibrate your expectations about what the healing and recovery process is actually going to look like and what it's actually going to feel like. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. But you're slowly trending towards healing as long as you're processing your way through the feelings.
I actually think that's very interesting just because, a lot of other behavior analysts, when we're working with individuals on behaviors, oftentimes, first of all, let's say I'm working with a child who, has issues with cursing. I don't know, just
hmm
saying, like, it's like problematic. They're doing it in public places, whatever it is. We'll set the expectations ahead of time, being like, hey, mom, by the way, we figured out the function of this is attention. So we're going to withhold attention, but I want you to know when we do this, it's going to get much worse first. The same way when
hmm
like a boyfriend, like breaks up with their girlfriend and like is not talking, and now suddenly we're gonna see an increase in the girl reaching out. Like the behavior is going to skyrocket and like
Yeah,
get
you
weird,
bet.
right? Like I always say, like to the point where the girl is, or it could be the guy, but like we set these expectations from the get go, right? And then a lot of the times with behavior that we're looking at, we're like, it's not getting better,
Hmm.
right? But that's because everyone's saying I say because wrong, and I've just become aware of it, but whatever. We're not looking at it in the big picture of things. Like
Yeah,
we're
we're
not
not
like taking
normalizing
valid
it.
data point. Exactly. We're not taking like data points that are like, actually, you were doing way worse a month ago. Like you
Mhm.
still feel like shit now, but compare what you were doing in a day. Like you weren't getting yourself dressed. Look, you're getting yourself dressed, you're attending work. Are you feeling great? No. But I think it's hard for us to look at the progress that we're making, that actually, like, if you are putting it on a graph, would be a great way to see it over time.
Exactly. And half of the battle when I'm working with people is helping to normalize where they are in the healing process. So, like, I'll give you an example. Today, I finished up a call with a client from Dubai who found out a month ago that his wife was cheating on him. So he's a month out from finding this out, and he says, "Keith, like I am so full of rage. Like I hate my wife. I am so hurt. And he's like, I am so tired of feeling this way." And I simply said, "So you're telling me that you think you're not supposed to be feeling that way 1 month after finding out your wife is having an affair? All I'm doing is normalizing the fact that, of course, that is what you're going to feel. You just don't like how it feels." And that's really no different with the heartbreak process. If someone calls me up a week after a breakup and they can't eat, they can't sleep, they have no motivation to go to work, well, no, duh. It's 1 week after your breakup. Of course, that's what your brain and your body are going to do. So, half the battle with people is helping them to normalize their experience so they know that not only is what you're feeling normal, but it's exactly where you should be in relation to where you want to get to.
I think that's the same, like, what I see a lot, and we call it tacting, which is labeling something. Sometimes, like, when you feel like you've been going crazy for so long, or you're like, I just, like, can't get anything done, then you get a diagnosis of something, or someone's like, "Oh, you're not crazy. That is like, you are married to someone who has narcissistic personality disorder," which I'm gonna ask
Hmm.
you about next, right? And, like,
Yeah.
getting that, being able to label it, or like, "Okay, this feeling that I'm having is not abnormal. Like, I actually should be feeling this right now," in itself is such a relief.
Hmm. Absolutely. I agree.
So that actually brings me to my next question. What is the average amount of time it takes someone to move on after a betrayal?
After being betrayed,
Mhm.
I'd
Well, and
say,
a breakup if there's 2 different
yeah.
ones. I'll take both.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to infidelity, on the short end, we're talking 6 months if both people are very mature and the person who betrayed them is literally doing everything the right way to rebuild trust. They have true remorse. And then the other person is highly mature about being able to see the humanity in why someone would have an affair. People are so fast when it comes to affairs to think that, oh, the person just wanted sex. That is almost never what affairs are really about. What they're really about is that someone felt unseen, unloved, undesired. And the moment somebody came along and helped them to feel that way, they didn't intentionally think, today's the day I'm going to betray my partner. It was, oh my gosh, there's this void that's been there for a while. And then all of a sudden, somebody filled it for me. So, if the person who was betrayed is mature enough to understand the human reasons why people have affairs, they have a much greater ability to move on quickly. But for other people, I mean, there are people who never get out of it because the damage is too great. They can never rebuild trust. They can't forgive. So it's highly dependent on individuals and how the partner shows up.
Which is interesting because, when I go in, or anyone working with anyone with different behaviors, whatever it is, we're always looking at like, well, what's the function of the behavior? Like, why
Hmm.
are they doing it? Like, okay, this kid is like sitting here ripping up all these flashcards on the floor. Like, are they doing it to gain attention? Because if it's for attention, I would treat that by making sure they have attention for doing other appropriate things at other times, right?
Hmm.
But if it's for escape, to escape the task, like, they didn't wanna do the flashcards that I was doing, then I'm gonna make sure that, like, they have, like, access to escape before engaging in that. Like, "Hey, you don't have to
Mhm.
engage in this behavior." So the same way, it's like, well, what is the function as to why this person is having an affair, right? Is it
Mhm.
I mean, look, so I think, like, people are blanket statement thinking like, "Oh, they wanted sex," like, they're a horn dog, they're whatever it is, right? Which is kind of, like, across the field, like, I think, like, just default parenting is, "Oh, it's for attention, ignore them." But if you're ignoring a
Mhm.
kid who was doing something to escape the task you gave them, they're only too happy you're ignoring them now, right?
Mhm.
So really, like, matching the function. So if it is because, like, this person feels 0, like, connection or, like, not seen. So it's like, I mean, but it would take a big person to be and who's secure enough in themselves to be able to be like, "Okay, I see where I could come in here." Like, and
100%.
how to respond, which is it takes a big person.
And the reason, a lot of the maturity goes out the window in big events like heartbreak and betrayal is again because it's triggering that core wound of not being enough. So you're correct that it not only takes a mature person, but it also takes a person who's very secure to not be threatened by the fact that maybe they didn't deliver in a way that their spouse needed. And so, one of the final stages for couples who successfully get through this is that the partner who is betrayed often has to do a self assessment to go, in what ways was I actually contributing to my partner feeling unloved, undesired, ungrat or not grateful that they have me? And that doesn't dismiss or excuse the fact that the person cheated. There's no excuse for that. But what it does mean is that there are often contributing factors that made it more possible or more likely.
It's behavior, bitches.
Hey, behavior besties, are you trying to get your shit organized for the new year? Yeah, aren't we all? So, over here, that has been my struggle for life with such severe ADHD that I don't know where to find anything. I need something huge in front of me telling me what I need to do next. And for some reason, I've always had date dementia. I made that term up myself, but it means I never know what date anything is happening or how to plan ahead. So, we created the Snabba Badass Huge Calendar. It comes with, I mean, it's huge, like literally like as tall as you. So, make sure you have a lot of wall space. And it comes with so many different color post-its to fit inside the square so that you could plan your year ahead. It's a different layout than a regular calendar. It all goes horizontal so you could see everything that's going to be happening. Whether you're already a BCBA, congrats, and you want to plan your pre-auths, when you need to send things into insurance, different things like that, there's space for that. You can put your personal things, or if you're someone studying for the exam and you want to figure out when you should be taking different mocks, when collective nights are, when you need to be reading what, there's space on this calendar for everything. Now you just need to clear a wall and make the space, and then you could get the calendar too. If this is your year to get on your shit, be organized, fear no more, Snabba has it for you once again. It's like annoying, right? We have like everything. So head on over to studynotesaba.com and get the calendar now. So how does someone move on like beyond, I'm just wondering, I'm thinking of like a couple of like that, like the trust is broken.
Mhm.
Is that just out of interest in your program?
Mhm.
Like,
How
is
do
that
they how do they
person
get
like what
back?
they're like is like now like suddenly let's say the partner is like checking their phone every minute or like, monitoring like where they're at, different things like that. Like I assume that can't be healthy either.
They typically go through phases, and a lot of people, particularly good people, feel like they are supposed to forgive and trust earlier than they're actually ready to. So they feel like they're supposed to, which is really a way of suppressing what they actually feel. So, what I always tell people right from the get go is the reality right now, especially early on, is that you don't trust your partner. And the truth is, you can't trust your partner. So, don't try to force something that isn't there. So there often is a utility in the early stages of a couple trying to recover where you can provide reassurances. So whether it's tracking on the phone, whether it's passwords to phones, access to social media, whatever it is, that can help the other partner to start to rebuild more trust because they have verification. We don't want to get stuck in that phase because ultimately over time the hope is that the person who betrayed will have learned an incredibly painful and valuable lesson about where boundaries actually need to be so that they never engage in those things again. So I view rebuilding trust like little micro deposits in a bank account. Trust is not rebuilt over 6 months, it's not rebuilt over a year, it is several years of consistency. And what will happen naturally and organically is that the partner who is betrayed will feel that shift and change. And it's so consistent that they wake up one day and go, oh my gosh, I actually don't worry about that anymore. But it takes a lot of time.
Okay, narcissism, the
Hmm.
buzzword.
Yep.
Uh, Narcissism, I feel like it's used a lot and like,
Hmm.
oh, it's a narcissist. Um, but how do we know someone is truly a narcissist, and how do you know that's what you're dealing with?
Yeah. The first thing I'll say about narcissism is it's very misunderstood in a lot of ways by most people. What most people think is that narcissists are incredibly confident, they're brazen, they light up a room, they're charming. That can be true. But the whole reason someone needs narcissism in the first place is to elevate their ego in order to conceal deep insecurity. So every narcissist, what you can know for sure is that they are incredibly insecure, and their fear of not being enough is even worse than everybody else you know, including yourself.
Can
So
you
they're
have a healthy relationship with a narcissist?
no, not a full-blown narcissist, no. Well, all of us to some degree can have some narcissist traits. So for example, in an argument, if my wife says, hey, that really hurt my feelings when you said this, or you let me down here, my ego will want to defend that and go, oh, she's telling me I've done something wrong. I'm not enough. I want to defend that instead of just owning it. That's kind of what we could call like a micro narcissism, right? It's me feeling the need to defend or protect my own ego.
Mhm.
So narcissistic traits show up in our relationships all the time. To me, the distinguishing factor of whether you're in a relationship with someone who is full blown narcissistic is that they never will capitulate or own anything. So it's not even a red flag to me where let's say that you confronted your guy and you're telling him, hey, I'm calling you out on this and it's black and white. He may defend and defend, and then when you keep pushing and say, no, this is what you did, and he goes, yeah, you're right. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. So they eventually back down once they get through kind of whatever ego they have. A narcissist will never drop that ego. They'll keep gaslighting, they'll keep twisting, and you will never get them to take accountability. So that's kind of your easiest way to know.
How do you get out of a relationship with a narcissist?
You walk the freak away and bury that person's number so far deep that you have no contact with them. Um, what I always tell people is once you recognize that you're in a toxic relationship, you have to recognize that you're going to go through withdrawals, no different than a drug addict leaving a drug. Because narcissists are so good at that when they give you that love and when they give you that approval, you go, oh, this feels so good. This person is validating that I am enough. And then what they do is they bring you all the way to the bottom and make you question everything you know about yourself. And so you're playing this yo yo game of seeking approval and then being totally rejected. So you have to understand that your breakup is going to be a full blown mental and emotional detox. And I mean that very literally because in
Mhm.
toxic relationships, the brain and body are releasing tons of chemicals, dopamine, epinephrine, all these really intense emotions, which is why the highs feel so high and the lows feel so low. And then all of a sudden you walk away, and guess what your life is going to feel like? Oh, wow.
Boring.
Exactly. So you have to get to a place where you go cold turkey, knowing that you're going to go through hell for several weeks as you detox from the intensity of that relationship. That's where you're going to need lots of friend support, family support. That when you start to go, maybe it wasn't that bad, or gosh, those good times were so good, somebody can go, nope, come right back to reality here because you won't be able to trust
It's
yourself for a
crazy.
while.
Mind really does forget things, you
Oh,
know?
it does.
I remember, I think it may be a high school breakup. This is not my college breakup. And I remember the one thing the psychologist told me, She was like, "Liat, listen, let me tell you the interesting thing about relationships. Interesting thing about relationships is anything new in life you get, right? So you get a new car. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe like the seats were so not comfortable before. The air conditioning was so not cold. Like suddenly you're seeing all the new things like and how shitty your old car was, right?
Mhm.
But in relationships, for some reason, she's like, and that's with any like material thing to do.
Yeah,
Suddenly it's like, oh my
yeah.
God, actually we were so cute together. We always had the most fun doing this. Like you're forgetting all the shitty stuff.
Mhm.
Right, and I
Yep.
think that is part of that process of coming out of, like you said, that up and down relationship, which I'd call a variable ratio relationship, like a slot machine that, like, when
Mhm.
you hit, it's so good that you're just gonna keep coming and keep
Yeah.
coming, especially, like, now, not only are you, like, hitting your baseline, he's brought you so low, or she, that, like, the low is so low that, like, the high feels even higher because you're
Mhm.
not just coming from, like, the regular level. It's it's brutal.
It is brutal. What the principle I always teach people is once they know that they need to get out of a relationship and it's really pretty obvious, but you're afraid that you won't be able to trust yourself to follow through on it. You do need to have that accountability with friends and family that you can truly lean on to help you not to go back to something you shouldn't go back to. But the other thing that people have a hard time doing, but is critical, is you have to go cold turkey and cut that person out in every single way possible. So I always use a story that there's a story about two groups of people that used to fight each other in wars. And one of the groups decided that they didn't want to kill anybody anymore. They were going to be a peaceful people. So they dug massive trenches, really, really deep, in order to bury all of their weapons. And
Uh-huh.
so you say, well, why would they bury them deep instead of shallow? And it's because they knew there would come a time where they would feel the need to go get those weapons. And if they were buried so deep that it would really deter them from ever starting to dig. So if you apply that principle to breakups, especially with
Wow.
narcissists, you have to bury it deep so you can't have access to it. So that means deleting the person's number, getting rid of them on social media, moving if you have to, like whatever that extreme thing is, to put them so far out of your reach to protect yourself from yourself until you get over that hump.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, I always tell people because we talk about this in my class with, like, putting something on extinction means, like, you are, like, cutting it off completely. I'm like,
Hmm.
"Yes, even your connection on Snapchat, even your connection on here, even the fact that you share a Netflix account, like, whatever it is,
Yeah.
all of it."
How many reminders do you want of the pain? That's really what you're saying is, oh, I'm going to see a picture here and they're going to text me here and maybe we can still be friends. My personal opinion, I am not friends with any ex girlfriend I've ever had. I have zero interest in doing it. That's in the past. It's done. It's gone. That's not being rude to them. It's saying, why would I keep bringing something from my past that I'm trying to let go of and keep it in the present?
It makes a lot of sense. And my final question for you today is, going into a new relationship, let's say you've left a toxic relationship or a relationship that wasn't good for you, you left with, like, a lot of pain, whatever it is, based on, like, the amount of, like, relationships that you've seen or you help people, what would you say the key things to look for in a new relationship are to, like, set yourself up for success?
The number one thing that I tell people, which is incredibly simple, but it's the exact advice that I give to every one of my kids. I want them to marry someone who is kind, period. If you find a kind person, that is the lubrication for so many issues in relationships, if they're just a kind person. The other thing that I would suggest is that you face your own fears of not being enough. So, what most people do is they go out into the world and they're trying to prove to someone that they are enough. And we do that through beauty, we do it through intelligence, we do it through accomplishments. And we're basically thinking
I
that
think
when I
I think
just,
I do it through, like, productivity. Like, if I'm not
yeah,
productive in a day, I'm like, like, I subconsciously, I think, like, I'm not, like, telling myself,
yeah.
like, I don't hear myself being like, "Leah, you're not," I mean, I guess I literally am. I'm like, "You got jack shit done today. You had all these things on your list. Like, what the fuck?"
Well, it's not subconscious anymore because you just made it conscious.
Yeah, no, it's 100%.
But what people do is they think, okay, when I have eradicated all of my flaws and all that's left over are all of these good traits that I want everyone to see and know about me, then I will find wholeness and peace. That is a recipe for disaster, and it never works because we're always chasing this thing that's eventually going to make us feel whole. People who find wholeness do the exact opposite. They have made enough space to allow all of the so called flaws and insecurities and fears, all of the things that you think that are not supposed to be there, are exactly what makes you human. So you are literally rejecting half of your humanity. And that kind of creates a split in the psyche, which leaves us always never feeling enough. If the expectation is that you are supposed to be more than human, well, then you're going to live your whole life never feeling like you're enough. But if the expectation is that I am 100% human and there's space for my kindness, but I can also be cruel, I can be smart, but I can also be dumb, I can be confident and I can also have insecurities. And allowing both of those to coexist is how a human being gets to wholeness. So we need to stop looking for wholeness in our relationships and start finding it in the only place where it can actually be found, which is within us. And when we bring that version of ourselves into a relationship with someone else who's trying to do the same thing, oh boy, now we got something really magical. So it starts all within us, and we attract whatever it is that we are.
That's for sure. That I find very interesting. Like wherever you are is what you're going to attract.
Mhm. So you want to
Amazing.
attract a better person, you know where to start. And it's not by trying to find that person, it's by becoming that yourself.
Amazing. Great. Great advice for anyone listening. I love it. And everything you gave today was so insightful. Can you tell everyone where they could find you?
Yep, it's Keith Allen Crossley on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok and Facebook. And then my website is keithcrossley.com.
Amazing. So we will have all of that in the show notes. Keith, thank you so much for coming on. I
It's been
really
an
appreciate it.
absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And you were so patient and all of the things in between. So thank you. Reach out to us anytime with topics or guests you want to come on. If you are that guest or you know someone you want on, we're happy to consider. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all with Behavior Bitches Podcast. Go follow us on YouTube. It's newer and we're really trying to build it, and it would mean the world. So that's all we have for you today. As always, love ya, mean it.
It's behavior, bitches.